everyone. I'm Tia of LSAT Unplugged, and today I will be interviewing our special guest, Rebecca Scheller. Rebecca Scheller joined the University of Wisconsin Law School in 2008 and leads the enrollment enterprise as the Associate Dean for Admissions and Financial Aid. Dean Scheller earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School. While a law student, she served as an intern for Justice Patrick Crooks of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Additionally, she was president of the Law Mock Trial Team, an articles editor and symposium editor of the Wisconsin Women's Law Journal, now the Wisconsin Journal of Law, Gender, and Society. In 2006, she was named the recipient of the Leonard Loeb Scholarship, confirmed by the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers in recognition of both academic excellence and strong interest in family law. She has also received other distinguished honors. Welcome to LSAT Unplugged, Dean Schellers. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tia. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Awesome. So to start things off, could you give us a little background as to what led you to admissions?
Sure. So as you mentioned so nicely in my bio, I went to Wisconsin for law school and for undergrad. And then after I graduated from law school, I went on to work in a firm and did primarily real estate law and business law. But before I graduated, those 3 years were really an enriching time for me in law school. And I was heavily involved with all kinds of activities. In my bio, you mentioned I was president of Mock Trial. I was the secretary of the Latino Law Students Association. I was involved with so many different things and kind of became an accidental, somewhat liaison to the admissions office when I was a student. So inviting prospective students to events, participating in admitted students' weekend activities, and of course, just kind of helping to onboard new students when they would start in the fall. So when I was practicing, I had stayed in touch with quite a few people at the law school. And when I had lunch with one of my professors one day, she had told me that they were creating a new position at the law school and they really wanted me to kind of consider applying for it, and that was for the assistant director of admissions position. And so I'd only been practicing for just over a year and was just kind of getting the hang of billing hours and meeting with clients and spending all kinds of time in the library. And but I decided, because I had such strong ties to the law school, that I would consider applying. And just a few weeks later, I switched career trajectories and was no longer billing hours and was on airplanes traveling all over the country, getting to meet with prospective students from every corner of the United States. So yeah, I think it was kind of maybe kind of a long-term path for me that I didn't quite realize, but was definitely a natural fit and next step in my career.
Thank you so much. You are the perfect individual for our students to hear from regarding the admission process then, and we're very excited to kind of dive right into the questions. Yeah. So how does the University of Wisconsin Law School regard multiple scores?
That's an excellent question, because I think there are a lot of myths surrounding multiple scores. And the fact of the matter is, at Wisconsin, as well as at almost every law school in the country, we take the highest score. That is very different than from when I was in law school and they only took the average score. So for now and for some time now, it has been the highest score. So we can see multiple scores. We can see if someone canceled a score or was absent. But really what matters, particularly because it's the number we're required to report to the ABA, is that high LSAT score. So it can be helpful when we're looking at it to see if perhaps there's an upward trajectory and someone has maybe taken it a couple of times and they've moved up that score, especially if there's maybe an explanation that maybe the first time they had test anxiety or there were other circumstances that impacted that first score. And then, alternatively, if there's a decline in the score, I hope that applicants would know that that doesn't negatively impact their admission prospects, again, because we're able to take that high score.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So a lot of students might have anxiety regarding different LSAT formats. So how does the institution view scores related to the various LSAT formats that are currently available or that were available previously?
Sure. Yeah. With that LSAT Flex and on the tablets and on Scantron with the old version, I hope applicants should know that we are we understand that that is at play for a lot of people, and there has been this kind of adjustment for a lot of people. So one great thing about the LSAT is that it's just one piece of the puzzle. And so the score is not going to make or break anybody. So hopefully that provides some reassurance. We always invite applicants to submit any sort of addenda that they might be interested in, kind of further explaining the circumstances about anything. So certainly the LSAT or their GPA or anything else in their file. And if a student feels as though perhaps the anxiety over the test modality may have impacted their score, they're certainly welcome to submit some information related to that. The other thing I would encourage people to maybe consider is LSAC, the Law School Admission Council, does provide quite a bit of flexibility with accommodations. So for those students that do have any sort of documented different abilities, sometimes including anxiety, that's something that might help a student to take the test, perhaps with more flexible timed conditions or on paper versus a tablet. And that way, that score can be more predictive for admissions purposes.
Thank you so much. So for students who are looking to stand out among other very talented candidates, what advice would you give them?
I think it's not a one size fits all type of answer. I think the answer will be different for different people. Law school is a very competitive process, and so I think applicants will have to really look internally to see what are the things that they really want to convey to the admissions committee. For some people, it may be work experience, and they want to really highlight that, whether that's through their personal statement or through an addendum, like I mentioned before. For others, it could be the numerical credentials in their file, and they might, that is something that's one of the first things that we see when we're reviewing applications, are that the LSAT scores, or the GPA as well. But there are a lot of different ways of kind of highlighting different aspects. I think one story that I read in a personal statement, I think, was the reason that really kind of carried that person's file. They just had a really compelling and interesting personal story, and that's would help them to stand out in that applicant pool. There was another applicant who dedicated a portion of their resume to their fencing career, which I don't know about you, but I don't know anything about fencing. And it was really interesting to see all of the achievements that this person had accomplished in fencing. So that piece of the resume was kind of focused on fencing. And then there was also an addendum to kind of show this person had a unique experience in the applicant pool. For other students, they might include a Why Wisconsin type of addendum. They might include a diversity addendum as well. So yeah, it's really not a one size fits all. It's really up to the applicant to really decide how they might want to best highlight themselves. And then I would invite any applicant who wants to do so to reach out to our admissions office, because we're always happy to kind of weigh in on ways in which they might be able to highlight those different aspects and help themselves stand out.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciated that answer, because it builds off of the question that I'm about to ask next, which is more so in regard to like the various admissions essays, such as the personal statement, the diversity statement, and the addenda. So what tips would you provide students writing these essays to really maximize what they're trying, or really exemplify what they're speaking to, what makes them different? What tips would you give? I know you just mentioned the fencing story, like our personal narrative is very good to really make a student stand out more. What tips would you give when writing these various essays?
Sure. Yeah, I think again, it's really it's going to depend on the student and kind of what they want to highlight. But our personal statement does not have a prompt. It is completely open to whatever a student wants to share about themselves. And sometimes that may be an obstacle that they've overcome in life. Sometimes it's a unique experience of them kind of making the college soccer team, or whatever it is. For others, it might be work experience that they did, or perhaps the work that they had to undertake to support their families, or a study abroad experience. But I will say we read thousands of these. And so one recommendation that I have is for people to really try to catch the reader's attention at the beginning if they can. Sometimes that is, sometimes personal statements might start with dialogue. That's a great way to do it. Or sometimes a quote can be helpful if it really conveys the message that's going to follow in the personal statement. And then another recommendation that I have is for students to make sure that they're staying within the boundaries of the instruction. So 2 to 3 pages, double spaced, is our requirement. And one way that I think that students can really stand out in our applicant pool and enhance their application is if somewhere, whether that's the personal statement or in an addendum, they include kind of a why Wisconsin piece. We get lots and lots of applications. And so as an example, last year we had over 2,000 applications. Our class size is about 244. So it's a competitive process. And to make sure that you're kind of showing that you have a genuine interest in our law school is a great way to kind of share with the admissions committee that you've done your research on Wisconsin and you know what you would bring to the table, and then how we would be able to further help you in your career as a lawyer. So those are some ways I think that you can use those written pieces, the personal statement, an addendum, a diversity statement, to kind of enhance the application. I will say one other thing, and that is the diversity piece means many different things, especially at our law school. For some, that may be racial and ethnic diversity. For others, it may be first gen, but it also could include, of course, viewpoint differences, or certainly if an applicant has a disability, or if they're a member of the LGBTQAI+ community. Those are all kind of other ways as well. So when we talk about diversity, at least at Wisconsin, we're talking about it very broadly. So I think there are lots of different ways that people can use those narratives to kind of enhance their application.
Thank you so much. And does a well-written admissions essay or essays make up for a lower LSAT score?
Absolutely. And I think there are a couple of ways to do that. One is, so not just the personal statement, but the writing sample, which is part of the LSAT, that can really give us a lot of insight into how someone might be successful at our law school. And so there are some people that are not as strong as, on the standardized test portion, but do really well in that written piece. And then, of course, a writing sample can really carry a file. And I can tell you, even this past year, we had some applications that had LSAT scores that were well below our medians, but there were some really fantastic, well-written, thorough, compelling personal statements that really, we just did not feel as though the LSAT score was as predictive as the type of experience that person would bring to the table to help them succeed in law school, which we learned about through the personal statement.
Thank you so much. And so the next question deals with the process essentially of like you all reviewing an application. So could you provide more detail of that process of looking at an application or an applicant and the factors that play a role in the admissions decisions?
Sure. All right. So we're going to go behind the curtain now. All right. So every school, of course, is different. At Wisconsin, we have an admissions committee that consists of 3 faculty members and then myself as well. The process is largely reviewed professionally, meaning that the faculty are consulted for trickier applications, ones that may have character and fitness issues, or if we notice a discrepancy, I may take it to the admissions committee to just say, hey, what all do you think about this one? But it's largely done through professional staff with a minimum of 2 readers on the file, and all final decisions will, I guess I'm confessing this now, will go through me. And that is, my charge with the direction of the dean of the law school, who I report to. So the factors that we are looking at are a lot of what we've kind of talked about. So the first thing that we see when we review an application is that banner page. So for people who have an account with LSAC, they know that it's, of course, the LSAT score. We see the GPA, we see trends, we see if they have anything beyond, I'm visualizing it right now, the bachelor's degree. So if a student has a master's degree, or in the case of this year, we had quite a few nurses and a couple of doctors, we'll see all of those degrees, the year in which those students accomplish those degrees, receive those degrees, and then we will see information relating to the undergraduate school and how an applicant compares to peers from their undergraduate school who are also applying to law school. So we'll get to see that information. Then we get to look at the writing sample, which I mentioned before. I think sometimes people often overlook. And one year we had somebody who had, I remember, a 178 LSAT, and in the writing sample, this is back in the day when they were actually written instead of typed, they drew a stick figure and wrote underneath it, "I know you're not reading this." And that person was not admitted. And they were pretty upset that they didn't get admitted. And we were like, you have to send in a complete application, and it looks like you aren't taking this seriously. So yes, the writing sample is a really important piece of it too. Other factors that we look at, of course, are in that resume. What is the student's, summary of educational experiences, any volunteer work that they've done? That's really helpful for us to see. Hobbies and interests. I mentioned the fencing thing before. That helps to really illustrate whether a student is going to have balance in their life. So it's pretty obvious that law school is a pretty rigorous program. And while we have, really great wellness programming at our law school, and I think many law schools do, we want to make sure that there are outlets that students have to kind of balance the rigor and the demand of the law school classroom. So yeah, kind of balancing that out with hobbies and interests. Again, that personal statement is, that can be really critical in the application process. One thing that I haven't talked about quite yet are those letters of recommendation. Those can be tremendously helpful. And this past cycle, or the cycle before, we had a student from a school in Boston, and one of the recommenders put in there, and the student again had excellent numerical credentials. And the letter of recommendation said that this professor was writing the letter of recommendation because the other faculty in the department were unwilling to do so, given how combative and uncooperative this particular student was. And so she wanted us to know that, to convey that to the admissions committee, that she didn't really know him personally, but as the head of the department, she was kind of the only one left who was willing to kind of write something on behalf of this applicant. So another case of an applicant not being admitted. On the flip side, letters of recommendation can be tremendously powerful and can certainly override any sort of lower numerical indicators in the application. So it's kind of a lot of those things, as well as, of course, leadership. If students have a break between undergrad and law school, that can kind of enhance their application. We do give a slight preference to Wisconsin residents, although we are majority non-resident in our incoming classes. So yeah, there are lots of different factors that we kind of look at, which is why we're able to put together such talented and diverse classes year after year.
Thank you so much. And the next question comes with those optional essays, such as the diversity statement, or in some cases, the addendum. So how would you advise an applicant who is unsure about including one or both of those statements or other optional parts of the application?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's such a great question, because so many times as we're reviewing some of this stuff, it feels forced by some students. And I want to make sure that students understand that they don't have to include that stuff. Certainly not the diversity statement. If a student really doesn't bring diversity, then they shouldn't try to force it and try to fit themselves into a box. Hopefully there are other things in the file that will help, carry it, and they don't have to worry about that particular piece. So I would say that's, one piece is don't force any of this stuff. Similar to the, why Wisconsin addendum, if it's only going to be a couple of sentences and doesn't really shed much light on your true kind of genuine interest, then don't bother including it. But for those students who do have, I'll start with the addendum first, kind of a genuine interest in being at our law school, again, kind of fleshing it out over a couple of paragraphs to talk about the clinics or the professors that you'd want to work with, or being in the city of Madison, or our diploma privilege. Those are all ways to kind of talk about that in a genuine way. And then for the diversity statement, again, diversity means so many different things at our law school. Race and ethnicity, of course, but disability, first generation, members of the LGBTQAI plus community, ideological viewpoint and viewpoint diversity. Those are all things that are perfectly acceptable, and really, I think, can make an applicant, add a different layer, add a different facet, I think, to the way that we kind of look at the application. But again, it is not required, and there are many different ways in the application where a student can really highlight their strengths and differences.
Thank you so much. Some students would want to know, how do admissions view students who might see themselves as non-traditional students? How do they fit into the process, or how are their applications viewed?
Those are always great applications. So non-traditional, at least for us, usually means people who have taken a break between undergrad and law school. And I say this as someone who did not take a break between undergrad and law school. I think that people who are coming to us, after a year or two or more in the workforce, or a second careerists, I think this year our age range goes all the way up to 57, with quite a few people in their 30s and 40s. Those are always files that we know are going to enrich the classroom experience, because they're going to bring different experiences to the classroom. And that may be experiences as, again, working professionals, as people who've maybe traveled a little bit more and seen different parts of the world, as people who have been stay-at-home moms even. I think that they offer a really rich perspective too. So as non-traditional students, I think it certainly is an adjustment going back to law school, and probably sitting for a standardized test as well is another complicated piece. But those are applications that we always really enjoy reading, and we certainly admit quite a few of them because of what they bring to the table, just simply because they are coming to us from a different experience.
Thank you so much. So these next few questions deal primarily with this application cycle. So the first question pertains to predictions regarding competitiveness. So what are your thoughts on the current admission cycle being truly competitive, and what are your predictions regarding students attempting to gain admissions to the law school during this cycle?
Sure. This is the year to apply. I think that this, we saw this huge surge 2 years ago, and at Wisconsin, I think we were up about 28%, and there were a lot of other schools that were up around that, or at least up 10% or 20%. Most schools, and nationally, this data is publicly available, contracted last year. So there was a national contraction in the applicant pool. We were still up about, we landed up about 8% or so, which was kind of unusual. But I've seen this movie before, and I've seen that there's been like a national contraction, and for some reason we're always at the tail end of it. So we were still up. Other schools have already seen, and you'll see this later on this year with the 509 reports when they get released, but a lot of schools went down in application volume. And to me, this is following a similar time back in 2010, 2011, and 2012. So I expect that with that contraction in the applicant pool, again, the job market is so great, maybe not as many people are thinking of applying right now. Now is the time to apply. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a different story for people who maybe weren't admitted a couple of years ago and then have sat out this past cycle. I think that they will be admitted to a lot more schools than they would have been even this year. So I think that we are entering a new phase right now where it will be a really great market for applicants to apply. So I will say that, there's also some early indicators of data. We as law school admissions professionals take a look at LSAT registrants, and we watch, population data. And I think that, like I said, we're going to see it's still going to be way more applicants than seats in law school classes, but it will not be as competitive as it has been the last couple of years, and that could be to an applicant's advantage, including on the scholarship side.
Thank you so much. So what are your views on Zoom informational interviews? What are the benefits if applicants seek those calls when they are really aiming to apply to law school?
We always welcome Zoom interviews. And again, as you said, it is an informational interview. It does not get factored into the application process. But, for us, again, it really shows like, wow, somebody took the time to express their interest and take the time to listen to what we have to say, and, what makes our law school a little, different than others, perhaps. So yeah, I guess this one has an easy answer. We are always excited to meet with prospective students and welcome Zoom or Teams, if that's your thing, interviews at any time.
And in order to set up these calls, can students reach out directly? What does that process look like?
Yep, all they have to do is email us. So our main admissions email is admissions@law.wisc.edu, or they can email me and I can set them up with one of my colleagues in the admissions office. I'm rebecca.scheller@wisc.edu. You can find me online. And yeah, we do this all the time. We're pretty familiar with talking with people in different time zones and across the country and across the world. And yeah, all they have to do is reach out and we'll get you set up pretty quickly.
Perfect. And this really helps set me up for my next question. That
Okay.
being, if a student is nervous to reach out to the admissions office directly, what is your advice regarding how they can get that additional information or help?
Sure. So we have a student ambassador page on our website. And these are students who are deeply involved with the law school. They're involved, whether that's through the Student Bar Association or through the Black Law Students Association or all kinds of different student groups. And that can also be a starting point for people who maybe don't want to just jump right in and talk with the admissions office, although I promise we're all nice and we're all fun. But yeah, they can go ahead and reach out to any student on there. Their email addresses are listed. And we also have 2 co-lead student ambassadors who are third-year law students, and they are very interested in talking with prospective students as they kind of pass the torch to the next incoming class as they become alumni.
Thank you so much. And so my next set of questions pertain to the law school experience. And so the first question being, what kind of student is the right fit, if there is a right fit, for the University of Wisconsin Law School?
Sure. Is there a right fit? I think there are lots of different types of people who would be the right fit. I think someone who is definitely up to the challenge. Maybe that's the common thread of who is the right fit. So, sometimes we have students who maybe realize during their time in law school that maybe they should have waited a year or two before starting law school. So yes, so the person would definitely have to be kind of ready for this and have done that research and made that decision that they know will be right for them. Other than that, it's really quite broad. I mentioned that our age range this year is 20 to 57, with an average age of about 25, which is pretty consistent for us for the average age. We have students who came straight through from undergrad to law school, which is what I did. We have people that have taken breaks and very long breaks. We have, I think we have about 124 different undergraduate institutions represented in our class of 244. So we like that geographical diversity, people coming from different schools, like, I'm trying to think who's in this incoming class, schools like Princeton and University of Central Florida and Miami and University of Kansas and University of Texas and Cal Berkeley and University of San Diego. So they're coming from all over the place. And I think that really enriches those classroom discussions, again, because we have that geographic diversity that's present in the class. I think, let's see, what other kinds of people are kind of the right fit? I think people who are motivated. I think people who have a strong interest and hopefully experience with leadership. Maybe perhaps that's through committees at work that they were part of before coming to law school, or perhaps people who were leaders in student organizations when they were in college. But yeah, I think the big piece is who's the right fit. I think people who are ready, who've done their research, and who will also be open to differing viewpoints, because that's going to be the day-to-day in the law school experience.
Thank you so much for that response. So some students want to know, how has COVID impacted the law school experience? Are you all now completely in person, hybrid? What changes or have been made, or what's going on currently?
Boy, that was a journey, I think, for all of us, and I guess it's still considered a pandemic. So hopefully we're nearing kind of the endemic piece of this. But like many other law schools, we had all of the protocols in place, and masks and testing, all of that stuff was required here at Wisconsin. And we're fortunate that we are part of the larger university, which you can see behind me, although I guess listeners won't be able to see it, but you can Google it. We had a lot of there was a lot of infrastructure in place to help us kind of be successful as we were both virtual and then when we moved to a hybrid type of environment. We are now, I think, pretty much fully in person. And I think there may be one or two professors that are immunocompromised, and we do have a couple of students that we provided accommodations to because of their own health situations. But again, we are largely in person. Masks are not required, but there are some students that do, and professors and staff that still do wear them. And I think it's really kind of been a learning piece for all of us that hopefully this never happens again in our lifetimes, but if it does, we will be prepared. And yes, hopefully we are past the worst of it and now can move forward and get back to that more traditional law school experience that I know our students have been wanting for a long time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that response. So how early should an applicant consider preparing for admissions when it comes to applying? What is considered early? What's considered like more so on the later end of the spectrum? So when should students consider applying?
That is also a really excellent question because it has an easy answer, and that is earlier is always better. Last year, I mentioned we had these back-to-back big-time surges in application volume. I don't think that it's going to be like that again this year, but there will undoubtedly be more applications than seats in the class. And as a result, we will not be able to make those offers of admission in March and April like we would have been able to make right now. I think the bigger piece of that, because some people will probably ride out the wait list in the spring and into the summer, and hopefully we're able to admit them. But the bigger piece of that is, law school is an investment and it costs money, and we run out of scholarship money every single year. And so the students that apply early just have healthier scholarship packages than the ones that apply that much later. So it is in your best interest to apply early, and then at least you kind of know your financial situation and can make the most informed decision possible. So earlier is always better.
Thank you so much. And now, as someone who attended the college in undergrad as well as law school, we want to know, what is your favorite thing about the University of Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin Law School?
Yes. All right. So again, I wish that I could maybe describe my background that I have right now, but I think it really is, if I can, campus and community. I'm going to just lump it together. Our campus is stunning. And I think I mentioned that we have people that come from all over the country and all over the world. And people, whether they're in New York or Hawaii, they're always just stunned at how beautiful Madison is and how it's situated between these two bodies of water. I don't think people really think about, how our state really looks, but it also provides for a lot of really great outdoor activity. So when I was in law school, I had classes sometimes on Fridays, and my classmates and I would then go to the Union Terrace, which is like a 5-minute walk from the law school, and some of them would take sailboats out that afternoon as we were all listening to live music after classes had ended. And it's just such a great vibe, I think, in the city. And I think the people that we have, both faculty and staff, and also our students, we just have such a great community of people that, again, bring just their different backgrounds and experiences and perspectives that really enrich not just the classroom discussion, but even hallway interactions and run-ins on whether that's State Street or elsewhere in the community. And it's just it is a great family to be part of. So and then of course Big Ten athletics, that's one other piece I'll just stick in there that makes it kind of fun to be on our campus. So
thank you so much for that. And for our final question, how can students reach you? And I know you provided that information in the middle of our interview, but just can you give it to us one more time so that they can have it as we head out?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's my first last name. So, and if you need to Google me, it's Rebecca Scheller, and I'm the Associate Dean for Admissions and Financial Aid. So Rebecca is REBECCA SCHELLER at WISC. So the first 4 letters of Wisconsin. wisc.edu. So rebecca.scheller@wisc.edu, or you can email us at admissions@law.wisc.edu.
Thank you so much, Dean Scheller. We truly appreciate you taking the time out today.
Great. Thank you so much, Tia. It was great to be here.